I'll just do this. We're here with David G McAfee.
McAfee. David G McAfee.
McAfee. Okay.
Like the virus scan software.
Well, I'm sure I always say that wrong too. Prominent atheist author.
There's going to be more and more of those.
Yeah, Disproving Christianity and Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist.
That's correct.
Guess at first I was going to ask you about some of your education. Like you have, I think I looked it up, and you have a BA in Religious Studies?
That's correct, yeah. I majored in Religious Studies and English, so I actually have 2 BAs, one in Religious Studies, one in English. The Religious Studies degree has an emphasis in Christianity and Mediterranean religions, and that's what I've always been interested in. Studying religions has just always been what I've enjoyed. I remember growing up, I wasn't raised in a really religious home, but my parents were Christian and my grandparents were Christian. They just didn't, they were what I call cultural Christians, so it wasn't something that occupied a lot of their time. And so when I went to church, I was more curious than anything else, and I wanted to learn more about what else the Bible had to offer, but not just the Bible, what other religions had to offer, and how they were different, why they believed they were different, and why believers believed the things that they did. So as I grew older, nobody was really surprised when I decided to major in religious studies in college. That was just kind of the natural progression of things. I had already been attending various churches throughout high school and even before that with different friends who went to different churches just out of pure interest. So nobody was surprised at all. And I just want to also be clear that religious studies is different than theology. It wasn't study of religion from that religion's perspective. It was a comprehensive view.
So more of looking at it from a societal sort of angle?
Yeah, a little bit. Mostly we were analyzing the origin of the myths, how they interacted with one another, how they didn't interact with one another but still had similar ideals, because humans are very similar in various cultures. And when you study it like that, it's really impossible to be religious, because you see how similar they all are, and you see that they all had their same cult beginnings, and you see that the prophets all had very similar, and we still see them arising today with Scientology and Mormonism and stuff like that. So it's really tough to be religious if you understand how religions work.
Right. Well, it kind of answers my question, how you could be a religious studies major when you're an avowed atheist.
Well, it was a big problem for me, not in my bachelor, not when I was getting my bachelor's, not at all. I actually had a great time. I was some of my best classes, my best college experiences were in those classes. But when I applied to the master's PhD program for the religious studies department, and I had a meeting with the chair of the dean of admissions, who was going to decide whether or not I got in, and it was before I even filled out an application. I was just meeting with her just to kind of show my intent. And after 2 minutes in our meeting, I saw her Google my name, David McAfee, and I saw her pull up the first link, which was Amazon, and I saw her look at my first book, Disproving Christianity, and she just looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, but you won't fit in with this department's milieu because you're an atheist activist with an axe to grind." And I explained to her that my personal writing had nothing to do with my education, that it wasn't a part of my educational work. I was very clear about that. I mentioned that Christian missionaries wouldn't be kicked out of their program for being Christian activists with axes to grind. So it didn't make sense for me to be. But she had worked for a theology school, so her perspective was a bit skewed. I did end up fighting it, and I got an apology letter from the campus. They asked me if I wanted to reapply, and I said no, thank you. I had no desire to be a part of that program, but I did get an apology letter, which I actually ended up publishing in Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, because in the book I talk about how it's more than just talking to your family. It has educational and professional implications as well if you want to be publicly a non-believer. And I ran into that firsthand in college, so I share that story and published the apology letter from the school in there too.
Well, makes sense why you wouldn't want to go back. What are your odds of actually getting your degree from them?
Yep.
I'm currently reading Disproving Christianity, so it's quite an interesting book. But you did have for a while there where you were giving it away for free.
Yeah, and I still do that. It's pretty much an ongoing thing. If somebody wants to email disprovingchristianitypdf@gmail.com, generally at least once a week, me or someone from my team will be able to respond to emails and send free PDFs to anybody who, usually it's for people who would like to try it before they buy it, or they're unable to afford it for some reason. Even though Kindle books are just $5 these days, that could be a lot for some people. So I encourage anybody who has any problem affording that. But even people who don't and they just want to see what it's like before they pay for it, that's fine by me as well.
Well, that's kind of cool. A lot of authors subscribing to that particular business model these days.
Well, I mean, for me, especially with Disproving Christianity, it's a book that I wrote it in college, and I basically I started off by compiling a bunch of inaccuracies and contradictions within the Bible. Being a religious studies major, I was constantly, especially since there was an emphasis in Christianity, I was constantly looking through the Bible anyway. And in some of my classes, I took a New Testament literature class. So we looked at the New Testament from an English perspective. So we looked at it just like we would have looked at any other book, any Mark Twain, anything else, and we analyzed it like that. So that included a lot of looking at contradictions, which caused me to think, well, my grandparents are biblical literalists. If they subscribe to everything that's in the Bible, and as I'm learning about this, I just kept saying to myself, I just want to publish something that puts this all together, all the contradictions, problems that I know about.
It'd be a thicker book than the Bible to begin with.
Exactly. Well, exactly. I did a kind of a pocket guide version of that just because I wanted to, like I said, make sure it gets out to as many people as possible. So I kind of channeled the biggest or the most important or the most damning, I'd say, evidences and put them into sort of a pocket guide.
All right. Well, I'll bet you that made Grandma and Grandpa happy.
Surprisingly, they don't have any huge problems with me. I mean, they love me still. They support everything I do. They're still biblical literalists, and they're still very set in their ways, of course, but they don't have any hateful words towards me, which is really great, especially in this day and age. I've heard a lot worse. I mean, in the book, in Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, I published coming out stories from 6 other non-believers in addition to myself. And the 6 others, they're different. They span different households, different cultures and stuff. So it's really interesting to see the people who had it worse off than me. My grandparents were surprisingly okay with me.
Well, that's good. My grandparents are both dead now, but they were both really super heavy Christians, and I never actually did work up the balls to say, "Hey, look, you know what? This church stuff is silly." They just, it seemed to give them a fair bit of comfort, so I didn't see the harm in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's go ahead.
And in the book, in Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, I talk about how there may be many instances in which you're not. There's no reason to talk about it or a lot of people wouldn't openly lie. I don't know if you lied to your grandparents or not.
No.
But omission, I mean, in certain instances, of course, is
it just never came up, I guess.
Yeah, and there are also entire societies where if you're to be an open atheist, you could be punished by law, you could be sentenced to death. There could be a lot of implications. So I talk about in the book how there's some responsibility that comes along with it because of the negative stigma that's attached to atheism still, unfortunately.
Well, fortunately, we're not in one of those areas.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately. Although I guess in some states it can have quite extreme repercussions.
Well, certainly if you're a politician.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Definitely, especially in South in America. You wouldn't be able to really be elected unless you have not just a faith, but a specific Christian denomination that they are acceptable, that they agree with.
I don't think you can be I don't think it matters where you are in the down in the States. You can't be a politician and out as an atheist.
Well, there are a lot of.
I think there's about 2. Yeah,
a lot. I guess it's not quite as many as I thought there was.
But they probably don't. They probably downplay it a lot more than they would.
Rather than talk about it, they probably yeah.
Well, do you think Obama's an atheist?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's as Bible thumping as obviously some of them are, but
Obama talks about, in one of his books, he talks about how he was raised in regards to religion, and it's actually some of the quotes in there, I've quoted them before because of how great his mother's perspective was. She was an anthropologist, and so she approached religion as an anthropologist. She had his quote was that she had a equal parts detachment and reverence, and she kind of stood back and watched. And he said that the Holy Bible in their house sat alongside the Quran and the Norse myths and the Greek myths and stuff, and this is exactly how it should be. He also then talks about how he found faith later on and became a Christian and stuff, and it's entirely possible that that's true, but from just a background perspective, his story of how his mom raised him is exactly how I'd recommend raising anyone. You just educate them to the fullest extent about all the faiths, just as from a historical, factual perspective, and then let them make their own decisions from there.
Well, except the Greek myths are actually cool to read. There's shit going on in those myths.
There's a lot of interesting stuff in modern myths as well. I guess we just kind of are used to them, so they're not as. I mean, virgin birth is something that if we weren't so used to it, we'd be like, oh, that's an interesting part of a story. But because it's ingrained in our culture, we're like, oh yeah, that's old hat. That happens all the time, virgin birth. But especially for the time, that was probably a pretty. It wasn't really a unique concept, but there are examples of concepts within not many within Christianity, but Judaism kind of revamped the Mesopotamian faiths in such a way that they created some new additions. I really like all myths, though. I mean, they're just generally interesting to me, especially when you learn about where they came from and you can trace them back to their origins, when you trace the Noah flood myth back to where it came from. The three wise men, how in the Bible it never even says three wise men, it just says wise men, but because another religion near that area had three wise men, we've kind of incorporated that within our own understanding of the religion. So there's just so many examples of them intermingling with one another, and that's my favorite thing to learn about.
Right.
Oh, well, I was going to ask, I haven't read Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, but was it just written for an age group, or was it written as like a younger person, or for anybody? Realistically,
it's written for anybody, especially because, as I mentioned before, it's not something that is highly focused on family. I know the title's Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, but that's really just the title. In the book, it talks about professional situations and educational situations and times in which it might be okay, not okay. Also, it just has general information for debunking myths about atheism, basically trying to remove that stigma from atheism. It'd be a really good book to give a religious person to read through and find out more about what atheism actually is, and how just because you're an atheist now, I mean, you might have been before, but just because they find out that you're an atheist now doesn't mean you suddenly lost all your morals and you're now a bad person. I mean, they should recognize that their sons, daughters, cousins, aunts, anybody could be an atheist, and the only way to recognize that is to come out or to just be public about it if asked. I mean, not necessarily if just go barge into somebody's conversation and tell them, they're not going to care, but I'm just talking about not hiding the fact that you don't believe, that you're unconvinced by ancient rumors.
Yep.
We're all nodding.
Legit answer. Something I noticed on your page was there seems to be people putting copies of Disproving Christianity in hotel room drawers.
Yes. So that started off with
Awesome.
I've just been I travel for conferences and for speaking gigs and stuff like that. So when I'm at a hotel, I'll generally just put a copy of Disproving Christianity in, and then take a picture of it and post it on the page. And then other people decided to take that up and do the same thing, and it got a little bigger. So I started a crowdfunding campaign and raised $1,500 to buy a bunch of copies of Disproving Christianity. Wow. And
Sweet.
now we've been donating them to local libraries and bookstores, and I'm going to be sending out official letters to hotels to ask them to tell them that we have a large number of people who would like to get some opposing material if they choose to include the Bible in their hotels, that they should either remove it or include something like Disproving Christianity, and that we'll happily provide the books for free and everything. So that's something I'm ready to send out the letters any day now. I'm just putting the final tweaks on them.
Well, it's not like they're a state institution. You can't really compel them to remove them.
No, you can't compel them legally. I'm just talking about asking them if they choose to do that. I'm not filing a lawsuit.
Okay.
I'm sending a polite letter offering them free copies of my book if they choose to do so. And I largely, I expect most, if not all of them, to say definitely not. But I would like to see if anyone wants to elaborate as to why they won't either remove the book or add something or provide. I even also suggested providing a litany of other religious holy texts in the book, in the drawer as well, if they choose to do that. It's just odd that it's only Christian, especially in such a diverse melting pot country.
Right.
I thought it was a neat thing.
Yeah. Well, it's not like you're trying to erect a statue of Baphomet beside their statue of the Ten Commandments on the courthouse lawn.
I think the best thing, though, is libraries. We've just been donating them to libraries, Mom, Dad, Atheist, and Disproving Christianity, and the librarians, some of them have refused donations, have said that they won't take it, especially at places in the South.
Of course.
The other day, we donated them to a librarian who said she herself was an atheist and that she'd be the first person to check them out. So little wins like that help me a lot.
Oh, that's cool. Little inroads. Well, where are you from, by the way, David?
I'm originally from Sacramento, California, and now I'm living in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, okay. Right on. You're not very old. Just from reading your posts and stuff on Facebook, I'd assumed you're a fair bit older than you appear to be.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I'm 25, though.
Oh, right on. Lucky. I wish I was half as smart as you when I was 25.
No kidding, eh?
Probably could have avoided a lot of really fucking dumb mistakes.
Well, with the religion stuff, like I said, I got an early start. I was very involved, very young. I was writing my first essays for American Atheist magazine when I just got into college. I was just a freshman, and just kind of started that ball rolling early.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
On your page, you do a lot of not just atheist stuff, but also like skepticism stuff. Posts against conspiracy theories and whatnot. Chemtrails.
Yeah, I pretty much try to cover any sort of false belief or unsupported belief or unproven belief. Anything that's a widespread belief that I think detracts from real problems. Conspiracy theories would fall under that category. I think that there's so much real corruption, real proven, established, and in the process of being proven corruption, that to focus on things that have no evidence to support them just seems kind of like a waste to me. I mean, it's I call it the boy who cried conspiracy, or just detracting attention.
Right.
Building 7 was an inside job.
That one's always weird to me because I was just a kid when it happened, but I remember watching the news and watching Building 7 burn for hours and hours and hours, and I mean, it wasn't hidden at the time, but now they act as though it blew up out of nowhere. I remember them saying, "Oh, it's going to fall soon." It's falling. Yep, we expected that to happen, but I guess their memories are very limited in that regard.
Yeah,
very selective memory.
Same thing with the chemtrails, though. They all say that, oh, well, the plane, they didn't leave chemtrails or contrails this thick in the past. It must be something different. You just 2 seconds to Google World War II contrails. You see so many, and they're just as thick. And I mean, it's just simple science. It's not even.
It's because the reptilian overlords are traveling back in time.
That's I've had a surprising number. I think it's something like 4% of Americans believe it, but I've had maybe 4% of my page members who believe reptilians as well.
Really?
So, I've definitely had people send me in their videos. I was just talking about it this morning about how they sent in a video of all kinds of different politicians licking their lips during speeches because that's proof that they're reptilians. And I informed them that lizards, as they're claiming that they are, don't have lips, and that their tongues are used for smelling. They just got confused on science again. As the
it probably just proves the politicians smoke more dope than they admit. They got dry mouth.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it proves they don't have chapstick on them at all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
That's just a different conspiracy.
It's because, I mean, the reason I talk about all these things isn't just about skepticism either, though. It's just in general about critical thinking and trying to analyze preconceived notions. It's really powerful to have a belief and to have something contradict that belief. It's almost impossible for many people to give it up. It's like a part of themselves if they've identified with that belief. So when I started writing about religion early on, I soon realized, obviously, that it's such a contentious topic because so many people are ingrained in their beliefs and they think that it's a part of them. And when you rip that away, and I mean, just by talking about inaccuracies or contradictions or giving even educational, scholarly criticisms, they get intensely angry. And it's not just with religion. It happens with conspiracy theories, ghosts, psychics, literally anything that is an unsupported belief. People seem to be very sensitive about it when you just ask for evidence.
Well, sure. And then the smarter the person with the silly belief seems to be, the better they are at justifying it.
Rationalizing it. And it's called apologetics in religion,
right.
But it's everywhere. I mean, I've seen chemtrail apologetics as well, and I've seen all sorts of people try to use mental gymnastics to make sense when really they could just look at their own beliefs for 2 seconds and just say, why do I believe this? Is this a justified belief? And I'm working on a project now. I know my first 2 books, Disproving Christianity and Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, very religion focused, and my next one's really going to branch out into different areas of supernatural and paranormal and just critical thinking in general.
Okay.
Excellent.
I guess I haven't read any of your books or anything like that, but I had a thought that popped up. Like when you're doing your religious studies, and obviously you went the atheist route. Now, do you look at it in a historical context or just just the religious studies side of it? Like, because I know I have a bit of an anthropology background. I halfway through my degree and went, this is expensive. I don't know if I'll be able to finish this. But like I've looked at religions kind of the way like I look at religion as, that's how religion kind of evolves in history, as well as, they absorb the other cultures, like you were saying. And, like, do you look at it as, cut and dried, like historically, or do you just take it all in one look, I guess?
I mean, I definitely enjoy the history of it a lot, but it's important to acknowledge that religion's still active today, and it's still having problems. And that's why I'm an activist for secularism. It's interesting because I love religion. The study of religion intrigues me more than anything. But I also am an activist against religion when it comes to encroaching on our state or governmental, on our rights as non-religious people. So it is a weird distinction. I run into people who hate religion with every fiber of their being, and they hate me because they think that I'm an enemy because I just analyze it from a scholarly perspective, and I understand its place. I understand that it was a way for our primitive ancestors to satisfy their curiosity for the unknown, even though it's false answers, and even though I don't agree with those false answers, they wanted something to explain the things that now we're able to explain through science. Science eventually took over that field of explaining the unknown, and that's where we go now when we look for those answers. But I also understand that it had its place in history and that it did serve many functions for creativity, for a lot of other things. But like I said, you have to look at it from a lot of different angles. Religion's a complicated topic, which is why it interests me so much.
Right. So do you, I guess, following that up, where do you fall kind of on the, does religion get a blame for a lot of things that it shouldn't get blamed for?
I definitely think many people, especially on my side or non-believers, would say that religion causes war. And I've often disagreed with that, just with the clarification that I think more often than not it justifies the war. So while something else might be the underlying cause, they say it's okay, and they're able to use this divine answer, and we can't really, nobody else can argue with that answer because it's something only between them and the divine. Since they made up the divine, it's only them, and it gives them no accountability for their actions. And that's why it leads to justification of some of the worst crimes in history. But it's important to note that it's not the cause, but the justification.
Yeah, it's just a convenient route to extremely vilify the enemy.
Exactly, and if your religion tells you that these people are evil, then it's so much easier to convince people that these people are evil and that they need to be dealt with or convert to your religion. And otherwise, not just convert to your religion, but that meant converting to your customs, becoming one of you. It's a full-on conversion, especially in history. That was really important, and forced conversions worked really well, unfortunately.
We must wear our blue jeans and listen to our rock and roll.
Exactly. That'd be a good religion.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I guess if we don't have anything else.
Okay, I do want to mention one other thing that I'm working on right now, which is within the next, probably, I just got this news this morning, so it's kind of exciting, but within the next 2 months or so, I'm going to be publishing a children's book, which is going to be focused on not just religion, but beliefs in general, how they work, where they come from, and what we were just discussing, what purpose religion served. I'm going to talk about how our ancestors came up with religions in the first place, and kind of just cover that on a very, very basic level for young children around 12 and a little younger. So that'll be very exciting. I'm working with a great artist named Chuck Harrison, who's done some minor illustrations for me in the past, and I've already seen the artwork for it, and it's very awesome.
Oh, right on.
I don't know. I can already imagine some parents groups already kind of going, oh.
And I try, like I said, this isn't an atheist book. This is a book that just deals with the facts of what you would learn if you went to a college and learned about religious studies. You would learn about how they came up with those ideas, and that's what I want to teach. And I think that we could deal with more of that, more knowledge in America and around the world.
Okay, so it's going to be about how Christianity is a bastardization of 37 other religions and that sort of
essentially.
Thing, yeah.
I don't even think the book mentions Christianity specifically. It just really talks about how our ancestors are just like us. They had imaginations. They had questions about things in the world around them, and they used religion to answer those questions, and eventually those religions evolved through storytelling. We're a naturally storytelling species, so that really helped along that progress. So I'm just going to tell them about the journey, like how that video tells how a bill became a law. It's going to tell how an idea became a religion.
Right. And people in the Stone Age didn't have closets or beds for monsters to hide in or under, so here you go. Mean old Sky Wizard is pissed with you.
I think you just quoted the book, so thank you.
Okay, well.
All right, well.
Yeah, just a quick one. Do you still write for American Atheist?
I do. I send in stuff occasionally, and it's not like I'm a regular columnist. I'm a contributor there, so I'll just send in essays when I have them. Since I've been working on 2 concurrent books, I haven't published anything with them for like 6 months or so. But when those books come out, there'll definitely be excerpts of them in American Atheist magazine and in Canadian Freethinker magazine and some others as well.
Cool.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, David.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.